A Prevost Country Coach bus repair as well. Well, I started a new project. I was working on the toilet, and I'll do a video on the overhaul of that, but I'm waiting on some parts. I'm also waiting on parts on the Cessna 180, but making a little bit of progress. But I've been concerned about a belt on the bus, particularly this belt that connects the gearbox to the dash air conditioner compressor. That belt was replaced. It was cracked very badly and was certainly in need of a replacement. So for everyone out there that's new to automotive repair and to these buses, anytime you see belts that have these types of cracks, they're not too far from failure. And this belt was just loaded up with cracks. So I'm glad that's replaced now, but I guess buses are very similar to airplanes. You start on one project and you find two more. When I was examining the other belts, I noticed this idler pulley, which is now removed, was dry. And I received feedback from Gil on the forum that probably should be replaced, and I felt it needed to anyhow. So I took it out. It was simply a bolt to remove it and put it here on the bench. You can see that there were two spacers, one on either side of the pulley, and when you spun the pulley, it was very dry. So I set the spacers aside and started to examine. I cleaned it up, and if you look closely, particularly on this back side, you'll see there's a snap ring which allows you to remove and replace the bearing without having to buy a complete new idler gear. So I decided that's what I would do. So let's take that over to the bench here. And we'll take that snap ring out, and then we will press out the bearing. So to remove a snap ring, you need these fancy snap ring pliers. This one you could go either internal or external depending on the type of snap ring. In this case it is an internal snap ring, so the pliers are set to internal. Now whether I can do this one-handed or not, we'll just have to see. So you put the little tool into those little holes, and then it ratchets together and it lifts right out. And to put it back in is the reverse of that. So now that snap ring is out, I will put a socket on this, and we will press that out. You can see one side is larger than the other side. So that side's smaller than this. So you're going to want to press this from this side out. And it's probably pretty tight in there, so I'll use my hydraulic press. And we will press that out. Probably again go down to our local Prevost parts store called Napa and get a bearing, press it back in, and put it back together. Okay, here we are pressing the bearing out. You'll see I used a socket, and I'm simply using this 12-ton hydraulic press, and we are pushing that bearing out. Now, it's going to get to a point where it bottoms out here, and I'm going to have to widen that to get the bearing to come out. But that's the way to press out the bearing. It came out fairly easy. I have adjusted the support rails so they're just outside the edge of the bearing, but still supporting the idler pulley itself. And then I will finish pressing this out. Don't know if I can do it and show at the same time, but we will try. So maybe I need to buy a tripod or something. Okay, so here we go. Okay, you see the bearing coming out? And there it goes. So I'm gonna have to stop filming because I need to catch it. But that's the way to do it. Okay, I have the parts disassembled. You can see the bearing's been pressed out of the pulley itself. You can see a little notch in there where that O-ring goes. And here's the bearing, just a standard common bearing. We'll go down to Napa and get one of those, press it back in, put the whole thing back together. It'll be good for a long time to come. Well, I had to make a trip down to Prevost in Nashville. They had the bearing that I needed, $19. I did visit our local Napa store, but they couldn't cross-reference the numbers, and they took some dimensions and ended up finding one, but it was $170. So sometimes Prevost actually does have the best price. Now the new Prevost bearing, you can see has a lot more information on the bearing than the old one did. So now with these part numbers, we could actually go and find one. But for $19, Prevost had a pretty good deal on the bearing. So I'm going to press that in now into the pulley itself and then reinstall it on the bus. I'll be using the arbor press to put the bearing back in the pulley. If I needed to, I could use the 12-ton press as well. But this is a Dake arbor press. I actually bought it surplus for just a couple $100. It has a ratcheting mechanism, and these are very handy for small jobs like this. So you'll see I push down on it, and I have a socket. And there it is. All right. Okay, and there's the bearing pressed all the way in. And now we will simply take the snap ring and we will reinstall it and then put it on the bus. I've got the idler pulley reinstalled, and you can see now when I spin it, it turns a couple of turns and stops. The other one would sit there and spin. So this feels good now. That's the way it should be. Should spin a couple of turns and stop. If it just continues to turn and sounds dry, it's clearly time to replace the bearing. And for $19, why not? So I'm gonna put the belt back on and then air up the airbags here and start tracking down those leaks. But really, this was a very, very simple project. I'm sure the Prevost veterans are probably going to think this is silly, but for us newbies learning our buses, I just made a couple of very interesting discoveries. So I put air in the auxiliary system, and I'll show you where I did that in a minute. Of course, that tightened up the belts. But when you track back the line that provides air to the airbags, it comes up to a little regulator hidden up here in the engine compartment. Pretty cool. And there's a check valve that needs to make sure it's sealing. But if I need to change a belt, it's very quick and easy just to dump the air, and you can see the airbags release. And you can quickly change a belt. So I just learned that. I didn't know that. I know it seems rather trivial to those that have had these buses for a long, long time. But I thought I'd put it out there just so all of the new ones out there buying these buses can learn along with myself. Then you take that back to its regular position, and that's the regulator. It then puts your belts back to full strength. So that's pretty cool. You can quickly change the belts on this very quickly and easily. On this bus, a 95, up here underneath the driver seat is a compartment here, which I showed in a previous video when I was replacing that board. But you have a place here to add air to the auxiliary system, and also a place to plug in an air compressor hose. That fitting looks pretty bad, so I'm going to replace it. But I was able to put, looks like about 100 pounds. It'll be interesting to see how quickly that bleeds down. I noticed right as I hit the 60, about the 60 pound mark, 60 to 80 pounds, all of the airbags, even the generator airbags, lifted. So the auxiliary air also runs these generator airbags, and you can see a little manifold here for those airbags. And back in there, very hard to see, but this one hose, can't really point it out, but that hose there goes into the end of the auxiliary tank, and your auxiliary air compressor is down in that dark spot. I did notice that my auxiliary air compressor is not, it runs, but it doesn't pump air. So it's going to need to be either fixed or replaced. And I'm even considering, now that I'm understanding this better, I might carry a small AC compressor with me too, just to have, because the auxiliary system I think also controls the leveling function. So there you go. I know for many of the experienced Prevost members out there, this is nothing new, but I hope it helps some of the newbies just start to understand their bus and learn along with me, because I am learning a lot and actually having a good time learning. Thanks everybody. Thanks for watching, and have a good night.